Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AmandaFest podcast. My name is Amanda, and our mission here is simple. It is to inspire and empower you to take aligned action towards your dream life, whatever that looks like for you. Today, I have another solo vlog, and before we jump into this episode, just going to take a quick moment to ground down and clear on our intentions, arrive in the here and now. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if it's safe to do so, I invite you to close down your eyes. Just check in with your body. Notice where you're at. Notice how you're feeling. Where in your body are you holding on to tension? Maybe wiggle around, move that out a little bit. We're going to take a couple cleansing breaths together in through our nose and out through our mouth. And on the inhale, I want you to think of an intention, something that you're calling in for this experience, for this day, for this moment in life. So we're going to breathe that in through our nose and let it go on the exhale. I want you to think of that exhale like something you're releasing, something you're letting go of, something that no longer serves you. We're going to do a couple cleansing breaths like that together. Nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And last one, make it count. Nice deep breath in through your nose. And welcome to your bodies. Welcome back to AmandaFest. I know my background is not that aesthetic today. I am recording from my parents' house in South Florida. I am back here in Miami for a little bit. I have a wedding next week. My best friend in the whole wide world is getting married next week. And so I decided to organize a trip around that since I haven't seen my family in a couple months. So I'm down here reconnecting with family, grounding for a moment, and just preparing for the next leg of the adventure. So I made this commitment a few months ago. I recognized that I was sort of hiding behind my guests, that I was desiring to share more of my life, but I was not taking the stage. And so I made a commitment that every other episode I was going to do a solo podcast. And I'm realizing now that so much happens in my life, like I want to say every day. Truly, I have a friend that I have been sending voice notes to every day, and I don't typically have like one person that I talk to every single day. I just have like a lot of different people that I check in with sporadically, but I have one person that, we've committed to sending each other daily voice notes and updates. And I'm recognizing even in that relationship and in that experience, I'm like, I never have a dull moment. There's truly never a fucking dull moment where I'm like, yeah, just chilling, nothing happened today. There's always so much going on. So let's do a little recap and I'll fill you guys in on what's been going on. So I think the last solo episode we left off, I had just gotten back to Playa del Carmen after my Tulum experience. I did my whole Tulum recap. I talked to you guys about all of the lessons learned and downloads and the amazing experiences I had and the wisdom that I was able to take from that experience. So then I got back to Playa del Carmen and immediately the energy was just so different. Let's just back it up a little bit. So I initially came down to Mexico because I was in New York for a while. I had a free place to stay there and I was really vibing, loving it. It was getting cold and my time there was feeling like it was coming to an end. So I was deciding where to go next. I decided I wanted to go somewhere warm and tropical. I ended up like thinking about Mexico, and then I realized I had a friend that lived down there. I reconnected with her and she was like, oh my God, I would absolutely love to have you. I have a place in Playa del Carmen. Come stay with me and be amazing. So that was like my initial way down to Mexico, was that I was planning on being in Playa del Carmen and staying with my friend. And then the Tulum excursion happened. But the plan was to spend the bulk of the month in Playa del Carmen. Again, so grateful for my friend for opening her home to me, for giving me this opportunity to experience. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have even come down to Mexico. So that was amazing. But Playa del Carmen was not my place. And it was just such an interesting reminder of how much your environment can affect your mental health. Playa del Carmen to me was like energetically not the vibe. It It was very, very touristy, a lot of alcohol, a lot of shopping and drinking, which are two things that I don't really enjoy. So I wasn't vibing. So when I went to Tulum and I came back to Playa del Carmen, I was feeling really like, ugh. And on top of all of this, I hadn't been alone, like truly alone, staying somewhere on my own, in my own energy since pre-Christmas Eve. And I walked you guys through this a little bit, but basically I met somebody at the end of my time in New York, spent a lot of time with him. Then I went straight to Tulum, that I was staying with my friend. And like, when I say staying with my friend, like she had a studio apartment and a bed, and I was sleeping in the bed with her. Like that's the level of like not having my own space. Again, super grateful for this experience, but at the same time, that's pretty difficult to have that amount of time not in your own energy, right? So then straight from Playa del Carmen, I go to Tulum. I slept on someone's couch. Then I slept in a hostel. Then I moved into the villa with this group of guys. Then I stayed with someone else. Then I went back to the hostel. Then I went back to Playa del Carmen. I'm staying with my friend again in her space. And I'm just like, all of this to say, like being inside of other people's energies like that for that amount of time, it can be a lot. Even for somebody like me who's super outgoing, I recharge in solitude. I need my alone time. I need to be in my own energy. And sometimes I just get so excited and I'm like, yeah. And I don't give myself that time or space. And then I start to feel it, right? So I'm back in Playa del Carmen. I'm kind of like, I don't want to say depressed, but a little bit. Like I'm not feeling super hype. I really needed to integrate. I had just had this really intense experience in Tulum where I was with so many different people and I learned so many lessons. And I really needed some time and space to process and integrate those experiences. It just wasn't happening the way that I was desiring it to happen in Playa del Carmen. I was also really seeking conscious community. So like ecstatic dance or sound healing or some sort of a vibrant community that I was really hoping Playa del Carmen had. The weekend that I got back, I did find that. So my friend told me about this event that was happening. It was a 45-minute walk from her place. It was like music and meditation. It started off where it was like, we laid down and it was a little bit of breath work and music and a guided experience. And then it turned into a full-blown dance party with drums and live instruments. And it was just this very tribal, fun, super hippy-dippy, very like exactly what I was looking for that day. One of the cool things about these spaces as well, it's like that it's all ages. So it's like all different people from all different walks of life. And I remember looking over to my left and I saw this woman who was probably somewhere in her 60s. And she just had this energy I can't even describe to you. I remember looking over at her and she was just this light, bright, magical being. And she was dancing. And I just remember looking over at her and being like, oh my God, if I can be like that at her age, I fucking won at life. Wow. Then the tribal music starts playing and she is like glowing. I just was so attracted to her energy. Towards the end of the event, people started trickling out. Her and I started chatting. And I was telling her how I was seeking community in the area. She was telling me how she was traveling, that she had children my age, la. Long story short, she invites me to an ecstatic dance later that day. So I was like, amazing. So me, her, and another guy around her age who is a platonic friend that she's been traveling with, they end up giving me a ride back to my friend's place so I didn't have to walk the 45 minutes again. And then I went home, took a little nap, and met back up with them for ecstatic dance. Went to the ecstatic dance, had an amazing time. Here's the thing. As I've been traveling for the last year and 8 months, I have used dance as a way to tap into community very fast, right? I'm almost playing this game of, okay, when I arrive somewhere, how quickly can I find my people? And typically my range is about 1 to 2 days, depending on where the place is. It's really interesting because Miami is one of the hardest places to find conscious community I've found. And I talked to some other people and they agree with me, but that's a whole other tangent. So Playa del Carmen, like it wasn't very easy to find what I was looking for. I was in all these WhatsApp group chats talking about events, and most of the events that I was looking for were all based in Tulum, which is 45 minutes from Playa. So I was like, what's in Playa? So I found it. Like I found the community. There is a community there and it is beautiful, but it just wasn't to the level of what I was desiring. And I think I was a little bit spoiled because it's so vibrant in Tulum that going from Tulum to Playa is like a night and day experience when it comes to the accessibility to these types of events and this type of community. Especially also where I was staying, it was just in a very touristy area. Like you walk outside and it's just like shopping and tourists and alcohol. So I think it was just a combination of a lot of things that I just wasn't fully in the right space. And I felt it energetically. Like I really felt that. So very long story short, I meet these people. I am so obsessed with them because they're like my parents' age and they are just thriving, traveling around the world, having beautiful experiences, like so open-hearted, open-minded, like really, really beautiful mirrors of what's possible, of how you can choose to live your life. I ended up connecting with them a little bit throughout the week. Like that week, I tapped into work. It rained that week, so I was not feeling very excited about being there. And then Gayla, who's the woman that I was talking about, she was like, hey, there's an event happening this weekend. Do you want to go to it? She sends me the event, and the event is at Holistica in Tulum, which is the place that I was at when I was just in Tulum. It's like literally my favorite place in Tulum, maybe one of my favorite places in the world. And so when she invited me to that, I was just like, okay, universe. At that point, I had been thinking, I did the event that morning, I did the ecstatic dance, and then I spent the week working and feeling energetically that I needed to be in my own space. I was like, I'm grateful to be here, but I know how amazing I felt when I was in Tulum. I'm not feeling that here. I need to change my environment because I'm starting to feel not aligned. And so I was thinking about like, what do I do? Do I go to Miami early? Because I had already had this Miami trip planned. I was looking at maybe different parts of Mexico. Maybe I just need to go get a hotel or an Airbnb and just be in my own energy for a couple days before I go to Miami, playing with all these ideas. And then Gayla reaches out and invites me to this event. And I was like, okay, I think this is a sign from the universe that I'm going to spend the rest of my trip in Tulum. I wasn't sure yet. Everything's always super in flow, but part of my brain was just like, that might be the thing. I remember I went out to dinner with Gayla and Mark and a couple of other people that were all like my parents / grandparents' age. This was so funny that this was just the group that I gravitated towards at this leg of the trip. Fucking love them. Like so much wisdom, so many lessons. We had a great time. But I was sitting there and she was telling me about this event and I was like, I don't know if I should go to this event because they were thinking about taking a bus there, going to the event and then coming back. The event was like journaling, yoga, breath work, cacao ceremony, ecstatic dance, like all the fucking things that I love. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about going because I shared with her, I was like, I've been thinking about leaving Playa del Carmen and I know that if I go to Tulum, I'm not going to want to leave. And she was like, okay, so then why don't you go to Tulum and stay? And I was like, there was something in me that was resisting it and I don't know why. And maybe it was because I had just had this amazing experience and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to recreate it, or I don't know what it was within me. But I kept saying, I really love Tulum. I miss Tulum. I wish I could go back. And then there was this opportunity in front of me to go back. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And so she invited me to reflect on that. Like, why am I holding myself back from doing something that I may love, right? Like, why am I saying no when I want to say yes? And I was like, it's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know what within me was resistant, but there was absolutely resistance. And so she invited me to sit with that. And kind of like at that dinner, I was like, fuck it, let's go. So I booked my ticket and I was like, I'm going to pack my bag because I learned this lesson a few months ago that anytime I leave a location, I will never again assume that I'm coming back. I will always take all of my stuff with me on the chance that it allows me to stay open to the possibility of continuing on with my journey. So I packed my bag. I went to Tulum and I got there and the event was at Holistica, which is the place that has like the hostel and the yoga and the cafe and all the things that I'm obsessed with. And I go and it's like 6:00 at night and I'm talking to Gayla and I'm talking to our other friend that's there. And I'm like, are you guys going to stay the night or are you planning on leaving tonight? And they were like, oh, we already got a ride back to Playa del Carmen. And I was like, yeah, I'm staying here. I'm definitely staying here. So at like 6:00 at night, I go to the reception and was like, hey, do you guys have a bed available? They were like, yeah. Also, it's just so funny when I tell people that I travel like this, they're like, wait, at 6:00 at night, you were somewhere and you didn't know where you were sleeping that night. And I'm like, yeah, like it always works out. It always works out. I just have so much trust and faith in myself and in the way that I move and travel that doesn't stress me out anymore. A past version of me that would have really freaked me out. So I end up getting a room at the hotel there that night. And I was like, cool, I'll stay here tonight and then I'll figure it out tomorrow because, again, I was desiring to get my own space. And now I didn't realize that high season in Tulum is really, really, really tied to the Zamna Festival. So all the shows and festivals where all the big DJs come through, that happens during a little period of time. And then after that, Tulum kind of, I don't want to say chills out, but like it does. It definitely chills out a little bit. There's not as much going on and the prices significantly dropped. So to give you guys some context, so Holistica is a really nice hotel, right? But they also have a dorm option. I am not a hostel person in general. I don't like the vibes of most hostels. The only hostels that I have ever stayed at are like surf or yoga related because it attracts a certain like-minded individual. And I just feel like they're cleaner, they're safer, and they're not as yucky. So this was like a really nice hostel at a really nice resort. So take that with a grain of salt. But a bed in the hostel, they're like 50 to 60 bucks a night. High season, low season, doesn't matter. I went on Airbnb the next day and basically I found a nice apartment complex with full amenities, with a gym, with a concierge at the front. And it was 40 bucks a night for a studio apartment. So I find this amazing apartment. I'm looking at it and I'm resisting booking it. And I'm sitting with the energy of like, why am I resisting booking this? I don't understand. I was like, I don't know if I want to commit to a week. I don't know what's going to happen. And then I really had to sit with myself and really take the lessons from that last trip of what do I need? Yes, there's a time and a place to keep yourself open to opportunity. But for me, this time around, this trip to Tulum wasn't about who am I going to meet and where am I going to go and what's going to happen. This was about what does Amanda need? And in this chapter of the trip, Amanda needed her own fucking space. She needed solitude. She needed to know that where she was sleeping for the next few nights and have a solid, I'm not open to opportunity. This is the opportunity. This is what I want. If somebody invites me to go stay with them, I don't want that. So once I got clear on that, I booked 5 nights. So it was like $200 for 5 nights in a beautiful studio apartment. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. So I locked that in. And I stayed in Tulum for another week. And this was like a whole different Tulum experience. Again, I talked about in the last episode, Tulum is so magical. It's like synchronicities are like, like nonstop. I get there on one of my first days, my friend Calvin, who I had on the podcast recently, who I also met pretty recently in New York. He messaged me and he was like, hey, I have a really close friend that lives in Tulum. You should connect with him. And I was like, sick. So I find his friend on Instagram, I DM him. Within a few hours, he was like, yo, you want to come on an adventure with us? And again, like I had to sit there and be like, I have work to do. No, I can't drop everything that I'm doing and come with you at this exact moment, and I do want to connect with you. So let's set some time and make that happen. And so he and I set a coffee for the next day to connect. And this connection was fucking wild, you guys. So this guy is from Toronto. And I got connected to him through my friend Calvin, who I met in New York, who I actually met through Sky's program online back in like December. Also in December, separately from Calvin, separately from Sky's program, I had Rachel Melinda, who was also on the podcast. It's just like the weaving web of just like interconnectedness. It's like fucking Tulum Jewish geography. But my friend Rachel Melinda, who was also on the podcast, who's also from Toronto, she knows this guy from Toronto because he plays saxophone, I think it is. And he had played for one of her reunion events, which is the event that I facilitated when I was in Toronto. And I met Rachel through Instagram. All of this had just happened. Like I just met Calvin. I just met Rachel. And Calvin connects me to this guy who knows Calvin and Rachel separately. And I was like, okay. I didn't know at the time why I was being pulled back to Tulum. And I was like, I think I was supposed to meet you. I think I was supposed to connect with you. And he and I are chatting about all these things. He's very involved in the music scene and the conscious scene in Toronto and Tulum and all these things. And he was like, oh, we have a big group of people from Toronto coming tonight. And these are people that host these really cool events in Toronto that are events that I've actually heard of through Rachel that I've been interested in potentially getting involved in. So whatever, very long story short, I end up spending a good portion of my week connecting with this group of people from Toronto that are all hosting these events. I'm going to actually have one of them on the podcast soon. But I felt like the universe was just like, you need to know these people. And as I've been in reflection of what the fuck am I doing, I feel like with AmandaFest, I'm building this thing. And as I'm traveling around the world, I'm connecting with people that are doing similar things in different places, or people that host events that are running things. I'm weaving this network of like, cool, if I go to Toronto, I know who I'm reaching out to. If I go to Tulum, I know who I'm reaching out to. If I go to Miami, I know who I'm reaching out to. Amsterdam, London, New York City, basically all around the world. I'm just collecting the event organizers and hosts and leaders in these spaces, in these communities, following the breadcrumbs and figuring it out. I don't know if it's about collaborating with them. I don't know if it's about bringing my events to their spaces. It's all brewing, but I'm realizing I've been doing a thing. And this is how I've always been. I've always been somebody that is such a natural networker that when I meet people, we just vibe and connect on such a deep level that it's like, we're friends and we're going to work together. And I want to create with you in some capacity, in some way, someday. And so that was really cool. These people, it was awesome. They were visiting from Toronto and they lined up all these gigs because they had this friend that was based in Tulum. And so when they arrived, they had a breathwork event, they had a DJ gig, they were performing and bringing their magic to this space, even though they were visiting. And I was like, okay, that's what I want to fucking do. I want to be able to travel around the world, go to these spaces and spread my magic and share and facilitate events and just tap in somewhere and be like, cool, I'm going to bring my thing here. If we're talking about massive impact and how to connect and share and spread magic in as many places as possible, it's like, cool, like you got to go to those places. You got to meet those people. You got to connect with those people. So this is my version of creating my dream life. I'm not sitting there and waiting so one day I can da-da-da-da-da. It's like, I'm just starting. I'm meeting people. I'm like not exactly sure why or when or how all these pieces are going to come together, but I know they will and I know they're going to. And I'm just fucking chugging along. We're doing the thing. So we touched on leaving Playa del Carmen and heading to Tulum, the Tulum experience, being guided back, trusting your intuition, tuning into what's aligned, and just letting the universe take you to where you're meant to be. I know I was meant to be back in Tulum to meet this group of people. I know that I was meant to be back in Tulum to practice the lessons that I learned the last trip, which is, yes, being in flow and being open and being in connection with other people and honoring my own needs first and foremost, taking care of what I need to take care of, getting my work done, taking care of my mental health, working out, doing yoga, eating right. All of these things are very important and necessary in order for me to do the other things. So I really got to practice that. I also got to meet some really cool people. I had an awesome little cacao shop that was walking distance from my Airbnb. And so every morning I would go there and I'd sit down and I'd end up in conversation with some amazing people. I ended up sharing a table with this guy who facilitates men's work. I ended up sharing a table with a guy that works in tech and is connected to all these different people. And he saw I was editing a podcast and just, I love being in spaces with other creatives. The thing that I love about New York City is I feel like it's the smartest and the best of every industry always gravitates towards New York City. It's like the movers and the shakers and like where things are happening. I feel like Tulum is similar in the sense that it's people that are doing a similar thing and also have recognized the importance of exiting the matrix. I see a lot of posts and articles talking about how the idea of rich is shifting and changing, right? Where it's like it used to be the accumulation of wealth and of course, like you need money in order to do all these amazing things. And what is wealth? What is abundance? It's freedom. It's being able to work from anywhere. It's being able to tap in and have a beautiful balance of passion and play. And I feel like people that go to places like Costa Rica, Tulum, like all of these really high vibe places, it attracts people that are smart, ambitious, on their shit, and recognizing like, hey, I don't need to be working in an office 24/7. I can do this work from the beach and I can sit down at a table. And if I need help, I was having editing issues with the podcast. I'm like, oh, I'm a coder. Oh, I know about this thing. I know about that thing. And just being able to be in a room with all of these people that have all these special gifts and talents and just to be in one space. And obviously all the people that are there value travel, value freedom. It's just so cool. But going back to going to this cacao spot and meeting this man who facilitates men's work, he and I ended up getting into a conversation about the work that he does, about the work that I do, and just about the lessons and the things that we've learned along the journey. We get into this conversation, and this is going to tie back to the lesson that I was learning in this period of time, is we're talking about head versus heart. And the way that I see it is when you're trying to make a shift or a change in your life, whatever it may be, there's a cognitive understanding and awareness that the shift needs to happen that comes before your heart is ready to make that shift. I'll use this very specific example of talking to somebody that is not aligned. So there was a period in my life where I was connecting with somebody that wasn't aligned for me. This was at a stage in my journey where I had this awareness where I was like, this is not the right guy for me. There's too many things that are not lined up. This isn't it. But my heart was desiring to be seen, was desiring attention, was desiring all these things. So I continued talking to him with the awareness that it wasn't aligned. And what I say is, if you continue the undesired behavior enough times with awareness, eventually you're going to feel it. And eventually when your heart catches up to your head, that's when you get to make the shift. Where I think a lot of people make a mistake is that they cognitively have this awareness of, okay, this person's not aligned or this behavior is undesirable. And then they try to force it, right? They're like, I'm going to stop talking to this person because this is bad for me. But they're not embodied in that decision. That's when it becomes really painful, really difficult, and or people don't stick to the thing because they're like, they don't actually feel it in their body. And with this specific example, I continued talking to this guy for a while. And then eventually he sent me flowers because there was a long distance thing happening. And he sent me flowers. And this is like, I'm FaceTiming him. I'm talking to him. I'm like, yeah, I know this is wrong, but I like the attention, whatever. And then I remember he sent me flowers. And I was like, And I was like, yay, finally. I didn't feel excited when he sent me the flowers. It felt manipulative. It felt icky. It felt like not it. And then in that moment, I was like, great, we're clear. Head caught up to heart. And now I no longer have to entertain this anymore. And then I was able to shift and move through that behavior. But yeah, like conversations like that where you just sit at a table with someone and you're just like, how did we even drop into that? And it's like, this is the level of connectedness that happens in these types of spaces. So that was amazing and beautiful. There was a couple of other lessons that came up. I had some really beautiful conversations. So Gayla ended up leaving Tulum and coming back, and her and I spent some more time together. And she was such a beautiful mirror for just so many lessons. There was one morning where her and I went to the same coffee shop. It wasn't a coffee shop, it was a cacao place. It was called Odie. If you've ever been to Tulum, it's amazing. I remember we were sitting there chatting and we ended up in this really deep conversation. And I had this whole laundry list of things that I was supposed to do. And I remember feeling this dissonance again of trying to integrate that lesson of what do I need to do versus how am I being in flow at the moment. And I did a check-in. When I'm trying to make a decision, I'm like, okay, is this choice in devotion to or distraction from my highest good? And I remember in that moment sitting there with Gayla and we're having this conversation and I had this whole laundry list of things I'm meant to be doing. And I was like feeling really pulled and I was like, I don't really know what to do. And then I was like, okay, check in. What does my higher self want? And I was like, well, beyond the to-do list, I'm seeking growth. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm traveling. That's why I'm in connection with the people I'm in connection with. And so I was like, okay, this conversation is like, we're really getting into some juice here. I was like, you know what? This conversation is more important than my to-do list. And so I'm going to prioritize this over that. And that was a really beautiful moment of that discernment of like, yes, I do have all these things I get to do. I don't want to say have to do, but and these things can wait because this moment right here and right now in this space and time with this person in this conversation, I'll never get this back. I can work later. I won't have this moment later. I just feel like it's helpful to share because I remember being in spaces and times of my life where I didn't know how to articulate those feelings or those sensations or those choices. And so I'm hoping that by my sharing and expressing what that felt like and how to make that decision, maybe that might help somebody else in the same situation down the line of like, how do you decide that's it? Is this a devotion to or distraction from? And really sit with it and take a moment, because I started to feel that anxiety of I shouldn't be talking, I shouldn't be sitting here, like I have all this stuff to do. And I named it and I said it out loud to her and I was like, hey, I just want you to know, like, I'm feeling this and I've decided I want to stay here in this moment with you because this feels more important than the things that I have to do. She gave me permission, obviously, that if that wasn't aligned, that it's okay, we could cut the conversation short. But that conversation was intense and deep, and she brought up some really beautiful mirrors for me to look at, specifically in relation to my relationship with the masculine. And again, my last trip in Tulum brought up all this energy for me, and I felt like, having gone that long period of celibacy and then coming back into dating, I'm learning all these lessons again. Healing is pretty fucking easy to do in a vacuum. When you're not inside of the environments that trigger you, i.e., if you have substance abuse problems and you're not near substances, or if you have issues with your family and you're away from your family, if you're not near or close to the root of your trigger, it's very easy to be all namaste and healed and have no problems. Or if you have issues in relationship and you haven't been in a relationship, then it's very easy to say, oh, I'm healed and there's nothing wrong with me. But healing in a vacuum isn't healing. The real work, the true work of all of this, doing your healing outside of your triggers. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're strong and ready to go. And then putting yourself back in those experiences and seeing how you cope. So if it's relational issues, take a step back, do your own healing, and then you're going to have to go back into the belly of the beast and see how you fare. You're going to have to go back to these spaces and see, can I hold my own? And so for me, with the Tulum experience, with all of these new experiences, it's like, cool, I did my work. I did a lot of healing in a vacuum and I felt great. And now I'm being put back into these tests and these experiences of like, okay, what does it look like in connection with other people, and how am I showing up, and am I showing up the way that I desire to show up, and am I holding true to my values? And so these conversations with Gayla really brought up some beautiful shadows of mine of where does my behavior stem from in the way that I'm showing up right now in this chapter. They say that healing, it's like there's layers and layers and layers, like you're never done, right? Once you've uncovered one layer, it's like then the next and the next. And so through my conversations with her, I've gotten pretty clear on what my next step in my healing journey is in healing my relationship with the masculine. And for me, it really comes back to safety and trust, not feeling safe, not feeling like I can trust. And how do I get to a place where I can feel safe and where I can trust and where I can be open and allow, and even to the point of like desiring to come back to Tulum and then holding myself back. It's like, where am I resisting pleasure? Where am I resisting leaning in fully and trusting that I'm going to be held? So I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into that work. I'm sure it'll come up again on this podcast and I'll share with you guys what that process looks like. So I'm in Tulum for this week. I wasn't sure when I was going to leave. I knew that I had to be back in Miami for this wedding, but I didn't have a specific date and I was trying to figure it out. And then a few different opportunities presented themselves in South Florida for that weekend. I guess it was last weekend. And I was like, okay, sign from the universe. I'm going to commit, right? I got an opportunity to facilitate at an ecstatic dance, to lead an opening. And then there was an event at Space Nightclub, and I was thinking about hosting and putting together a group. I ended up deciding this is the weekend I'm going to do the Space event, and I'm going to come back to facilitate this event. So I was like, cool, we're making a decision. We're committing. We're pulling the trigger. We're booking a flight. So I booked my flight to Miami. I'm on my way to the airport. I'm feeling really sad. I'm really recognizing like the last few places I've left, I've been really, really sad to leave, and just really sitting with and recognizing how much of a privilege it is to be sad to leave a place, how amazing it is to truly be able to feel so at home in so many different places and to be sad to go. But now I have this whole amazing community in Tulum. I'm like very, very, very seriously considering making this an annual seasonal trip. So going for an extended period of time for a certain period of time every year, I think may start to become a thing. I'm thinking maybe next year, like December to February, so I could get a little bit of low season, a little bit of high season. Because I will say this time in Tulum, totally different experience because the Zamna parties were done I really got to experience what local life is like in Tulum. But Tulum is interesting. It's similar to like LA, where it's like nobody's actually from Tulum. And most of the people that live in Tulum are pretty seasonal. They either only live there for part of the year, or they come annually. So it was cool to get to experience the people that really know the place. Still fucking poppin'. I went out on a Monday night to this place called La Pazine, and it was poppin', like house music, dancing. There's still a lot of people, but it's just on a different level than what the party scene is when Zamna's alive and happening. So we're on our way to the airport. We're feeling sad. We're feeling grateful. We're like, okay, we're definitely coming back. I land in Miami. The night before I left, I heard from the ecstatic event that I was supposed to host that Saturday night when I landed in Miami. She was really sick and had to reschedule the event. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Flowing with the universe. There's a reason why I was meant to come back at this time. Like, it's totally fine. I also got to focus on my space event. So let's talk about the space event. So I started working with a mentor to support me in building my business. And he has helped me to get clarity on the one thing that I want to focus on, because I am like, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I want to have a podcast and I want to do content creation. And I want to do events and I want to do retreats and I want to do this. And yes, I'm still going to do all the things. Like, I am still going to do all the things, but he's been helping me just like narrow and focus on what lights me up the most. And we got really clear on, I really want to do events. Particularly, I would love to have an offering that I get to share with festivals and shows and get to bring them to these different events. So we were talking about it and I was like, there's an event happening in Miami. I want to go to Space Nightclub, which is one of the most iconic nightclubs in the world, specifically known for its marathon parties. They start the parties at like 11 o'clock at night and they go until midday the next day. Before I went to Miami, I was looking up the schedule, and one of the DJs that I actually saw in Tulum was playing at Space, Bedouin. And I was like, oh, this looks like a great show. I totally want to do this. And I was thinking about going and doing it my way. And I have a very specific way of partying that I'll walk you guys through. But I was telling him that I was going to do this. And I was thinking of just capturing a bunch of content and sharing it. And then he was like, why don't you get a group together? And immediately I got like, oh my God, like nobody's going to come. I don't know. And he was like, what if you just invite one person? He was like, take one person through your party process and just show them what it could be like. You could still get your content. You could still do your thing. You're going to do it anyway. Like, just put it out there. See who wants to go. So I did. The response was insane, you guys. I posted it on Instagram and I got like tons of reshares, tons of comments. I had people calling me being like, this is so cool. Like, I love what you're doing. I'm so interested. And it just reminded me, and this is like a message I'm going to pass on to you guys. If you are doing cool shit in the world, talk about it. Tell people what you are doing, because you have no idea what doors that's going to open. We all have a platform. Social media is amazing. There are definitely dark and shadow sides to it, but at the same time, it's so amazing that each of us has a platform to be able to share and talk about what we're excited about and what we're doing. And the more that you talk about it and the more that you share, the more that people are going to be able to think of you and network with you and tap into your field. All this to say, share your shit, tell people what you're doing. It's definitely worth it. I've had some amazing opportunities come my way in the last few weeks because of sharing what I'm doing. So the space event, basically what I was thinking of doing is, instead of staying up all night and partying till sunrise, I was like, I'm a dayer. I don't like to party all night. I like to wake up in the morning and dance. So I was like, I'm going to go to bed, get a good night's rest, wake up in the morning, set my intentions, stretch, get in my body, get clear, and then be sober and just go and fucking dance and just have a morning. And so that was my intention. And so I put it out there. I invited a group of people. I ended up having like 12 people join the group and 6 people actually showed up and we all did it together. So I got a WhatsApp group together. I sent them a pre-party playbook of some invitations of things that I've done in the past that work well for me. For the pregame, it was like, we're going to rest, we're going to stretch, we're going to get clear on our intentions. I always like to imagine an energetic bubble around me, because some people are really resistant to go to clubs and spaces like this because the energy is so intense. For me, I'm like, I'm in my own little universe. I'm in my own vibe. So then at the party, the goal is to fucking be the vibe. Using my friend Adam Dorsey's phrase, we are the human permission slips. By us showing up in our authenticity, we are inherently giving others permission to do the same. So how do we show up, be the vibe, moving with intention, staying present? I talk about being intentional about your phone. Yes, capture the content, get the moment, but also fucking put your phone away and be in the moment. Don't be scrolling on social media. Don't be texting people that aren't there. Like, just be here in the moment. Prioritizing your needs as well. If you don't vibe, if you're not having a good time, if you don't feel well, leave. Sit down, grab water, honor yourself, do what you need to do. And then for the post game, resting, reflecting, integrating, and sharing your experience and talking about it and showing people like, hey, I went and partied all morning and I feel amazing. I said in the group chat the day after, I was like, how are you guys feeling? And there's this combination of like exhausted, of course, but also like inspired and energized and excited. And that was like the overall response. And I was like, fuck yeah. Because my desire is to show people, how do we use spaces like parties, like clubs, like festivals, like raves as a way to connect deeper, as opposed to a way to disconnect and dissociate. And so that was a really fun experiment. Oh, and also my mom came as well, and I posted a reel, and I'm still working on figuring out how I'm going to storytell and all the content, but like that was a fucking success. So a couple days later, I went to my grandma's nursing home to visit her, and there was some music playing, and I was like dancing with some of the residents, and I just had this download, and I was like, oh my fucking God, I need to throw a rave here. And so I went to the activities coordinator, talked to him. He was down. So this is happening tomorrow morning. I am throwing a rave for seniors at my grandma's memory care unit, which is mostly people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And we're going to create a sensory rich rave experience to show people how to have fun and how to have a good time and how to connect, and that you're never too old to have these type of experiences, and really tapping into like how enriching movement and connection is at all ages. Like, it doesn't matter. So I'm so excited for this experiment. This is one of my first paid gigs for AmandaFest events. This is only my second ever official AmandaFest event. Well, third. So this isn't something that's totally new for me, by the way. So back when I worked in Hollywood, when I was working for Glenn, I produced, managed, and creatively directed dozens of entertainment networking events, including a 50+ person space cowboy themed event in a barn in Texas. I did a 25+ person Top Gun themed event in Vegas. Imagine wrangling over 25 drunk adults in Vegas. That was a whole fucking experience. And then one of my favorite ones was a 500 person tracksuits and tequila themed event with A-list celebrities. And it was so fun. So this is not something that's new for me. Throwing events, organizing people, putting together amazing intentional experiences is something that brings me so much joy. But now doing this through the AmandaFest lens is just a whole new ballgame. I'm like so excited for what's going to unfold. And as you can see, like these opportunities and these things, like they're happening really fast and just sort of like unfolding. So I'm really excited for that. And I will definitely report back on that on the next solo pod. And then upcoming tonight, I'm going down to Miami to do some networking with some event facilitators. I'm also going to be co-facilitating an event later this month here in Miami. And then tomorrow, I'm going to go to St. Pete, which is about like a 3.5 hour drive, almost 4 hours from my parents' place. And I've heard that there's a really beautiful conscious community out there. So I'm going to go check out their ecstatic dance there. My friend Thomas throws these amazing events and has like amazing, really big community out in St. Pete. And he's throwing an event on Friday night. So I'm going to go and check that out. And then next week, I have my best friend's wedding and I am co-emceeing her Friday night dinner. I am so excited to bring the AmandaFest magic to her whole wedding experience. I am stoked. I have a retreat that I'm working on with my friend Nicole, where we're putting together a Reignite Your Why, helping people get clarity on what they're desiring to pursue and their mission. I also have a potential collaboration upcoming with my friend Jaro, who is also on this podcast. And he has an online community to support people in going viral and how to spread their message and how to use social media to live the life that they've dreamed of and to share their message and to have massive impact. And so he and I are potentially going to be collaborating on a mindfulness experience through his platform. And then I'm also working on putting together some pitches and proposals for festivals and festival experiences throughout the year. We have Miami Music Week coming up, which I'm debating if I'm going to stay in South Florida for. A strong part of me feels like after the rave and after the wedding, I'm going to sit down and really get clarity on what that looks like, because I feel like there's a lot of amazing opportunities here in South Florida next month. So that may be happening. And then the next like thing on the docket is I have a show in Mexico City. So I might be doing a few weeks in Mexico City, and then just planning the year around shows and festivals and how to bring magic and experiences to all these places and spaces. I feel like I just kind of rushed through that a little bit towards the end because I'm like, there's so much happening and this and that. Da, 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 da. But to kind of sum it all up, wrap it all up, we are traveling around the world. We are dancing around the world. We are building community. We are connecting with others. We are getting clarity on our mission, and we are finding out how to have as much impact as possible. And that's the goal, and that's the focus. And if I can share my wisdom, share my magic, and spread this message of connection and intentionality and in play, I fucking won in life. Like, that's all I'm desiring to do right now. I'm really excited for all of these things coming up. I am stoked to keep you guys posted. I feel like you guys are enjoying the vlog style podcast. It's so funny how resistant I was to do these because I was like, I have to figure out a theme and a topic and this and that. I'm like, you know what? If I just fucking get on here and talk about my life for however long this ends up being post edit, I feel like that's a lot. Like, sharing my travels, sharing the lessons learned, sharing my wisdom, sharing how I'm building this business and like what's happening. And if the goal of this is to take aligned action towards your dream life, what does that literally look like? Well, it's mindset, it's action, it's connection, it's taking steps, it's trying things, it's risking failure. It's all of these things mixed up into one. And I'm really grateful to have this platform to get to share this in real time with you guys as we figure out what the fuck this is. I also have some really awesome podcast guests coming up this year that I am like so excited about. I recorded 2 of them already. I have a few coming up, and I'm really making sure to have cool, interesting, unique people on the podcast that I'm genuinely interested about, that I know you guys will be too. So stay tuned for all of the amazing things that are coming up. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for supporting me and for being just as excited about all of the things that are happening. And I am so excited to continue to share and hopefully inspire you guys to do your version of this. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to travel the world. You don't have to throw parties. You don't have to live raves. Like, you can do whatever your version is. But I hope that in hearing this, that in me sharing all of these things, it inspires you to live more intentionally. It inspires you to get curious about what lights you up, what gets you excited, and what are little things that you could be doing every single day to take steps towards your dreams. Thank you. I love you guys, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.